Aethelred the Unready, a deep dive into his life and reign. Aethelred II, often referred to as Aethelred the Unready, ruled as King of England from 978 to 1013 and again from 1014 until his death in 1016. His reign is marked by a series of misfortunes, invasions, and political missteps, earning him one of the most unfortunate reputations in English history. Despite the negative light cast on his rule, his story is far more complex, shaped by political pressures, dynastic struggles, and the formidable challenge of Viking invasions. Born around 966 to King Edgar the Peaceful and Queen Aelfrith, Aethelred was the youngest of Edgar's sons. His birth occurred during a period of relative peace and prosperity in Anglo-Saxon England. Edgar's reign, 959–975, was known for its stability, church reform, and consolidation of the English kingdom. However, the peace of Edgar's reign did not last long after his death in 975. Aethelred's older half-brother, Edward the Martyr, ascended the throne but faced opposition due to his youth and the perceived illegitimacy of his birth. Edward's reign was cut short in 978 when he was murdered at Corfe Castle under mysterious circumstances, an event that paved the way for Aethelred's ascension to the throne. Although there is no direct evidence linking Aethelred to his brother's death, his mother, Aelfrith, was widely suspected of involvement. Aethelred's epithet, the Unready, is derived from the Old English word unread, which means ill-counselled or poorly advised. It is not a comment on Aethelred's personal qualities, but rather on his governance and the apparent inefficacy of his advisers. Ironically, his name Aethelred means noble counsel, highlighting the contrast between his name and reputation. Aethelred became king at the age of approximately 12 in 978 after Edward's assassination. His early reign was dominated by political instability, internal strife, and the resurgence of Viking raids. England had faced Viking attacks intermittently for over a century by this point, but after a period of relative calm, the invasions resumed with ferocity during Aethelred's rule. The first major Viking raids during Aethelred's reign occurred in 980, just 2 years after he took the throne. These early raids targeted the southern coasts of England, including Dorset and Devon, and marked the beginning of what would be a near-constant threat throughout Aethelred's kingship. Initially, these attacks were limited in scale, but they gradually increased in intensity and frequency as the years passed. One of the most defining aspects of Aethelred's reign was his struggle to defend his kingdom against the Viking invasions, particularly those led by the Danes. The raids escalated significantly after 991, culminating in the infamous Battle of Maldon, where the English suffered a major defeat against the forces of Olaf Tryggvason, a prominent Viking leader. In response to the Viking threat, Aethelred adopted a policy of paying large sums of money, known as Danegeld, to the invaders in the hopes of buying peace. The first such payment, amounting to £10,000 of silver, was made in 991 following the defeat at Maldon. Over the next 2 decades, England would pay enormous sums to Viking raiders, which only temporarily delayed their assaults. Between 991 and 1016, Aethelred's government is estimated to have paid more than £250,000 of silver in Danegeld. This policy, while offering short-term respite, has been criticised as a sign of weakness and indecision. Rather than confronting the Vikings militarily with consistent success, Aethelred's payments encouraged further raids, as they demonstrated that England was willing to buy peace rather than defend itself. The Danegeld was a heavy burden on the English economy and did little to prevent the increasing Danish ambition for territorial conquest. In an effort to curb the growing Viking menace, Aethelred made a fateful and controversial decision in 1002. On November 13, 1002, Aethelred ordered the massacre of all Danes living in England. This event, known as the St. Brice's Day Massacre, was a brutal attempt to rid the kingdom of Viking influence. The massacre likely targeted not only Viking raiders, but also settled Danish communities in England, many of whom had lived in peace for years. One of the most prominent victims of this massacre was Gunhilda, the sister of Svein Forkbeard, the King of Denmark. The killing of Gunhilda and other Danes in England provoked Svein's wrath and intensified the Danish campaigns against Aethelred. The massacre ultimately backfired, as Svein Forkbeard launched a series of devastating invasions in retaliation. Svein's forces ravaged much of southern England, and his campaigns from 1003 to 1004 were especially destructive. Aethelred's position grew increasingly precarious as the Viking threat mounted. By 1013, Svein Forkbeard's campaigns had gained such momentum that he managed to conquer most of England. In that year, Svein declared himself King of England, and Aethelred was forced to flee to Normandy, seeking refuge with his brother-in-law, Duke Richard II of Normandy. Aethelred's wife, Emma of Normandy, was the sister of Richard II, and the marriage, which took place in 1002, had been a strategic alliance aimed at securing Norman support. Aethelred's exile was short-lived, however. When Svein Forkbeard died unexpectedly in 1014, the English nobility invited Aethelred to return to the throne, provided he could promise to rule more effectively than before. Aethelred returned to England and resumed his kingship, but his power had been severely weakened, and the kingdom remained divided. Swein's son, Cnut the Great, soon launched his own campaign to take the English throne. Aethelred's final years were marked by continued warfare and instability as Cnut, with the support of many Danish forces, sought to claim the kingdom his father had conquered. Aethelred died on April 23, 1016 in London, during Cnut's invasion. His son, Edmund Ironside, briefly succeeded him and fought valiantly against Cnut, but was ultimately forced into a settlement, dividing the kingdom between the English and the Danes. When Edmund died later that same year, Cnut became the undisputed King of England. Aethelred's reign, spanning nearly 40 years, is remembered as one of decline and crisis, earning him the enduring moniker, the Unready. The title unread, in Old English, meaning ill-advised, suggests that his failures were not solely his own, but were also the result of poor counsel and the immense challenges he faced. Viking invasions were a formidable force for any king to contend with, and Aethelred was unfortunate to face some of the most relentless and organised Viking campaigns of the era. Modern historians have often taken a more nuanced view of Aethelred's reign. While his governance was undoubtedly flawed, the extent of Viking aggression and the internal divisions within his kingdom made his position nearly untenable. His reliance on Danegeld payments, while a sign of weakness, reflected the desperate circumstances in which he found himself. The events of Aethelred's reign laid the groundwork for the eventual rise of Cnut the Great and the integration of England into the North Sea Empire, but they also contributed to the development of English political institutions and the centralisation of royal power. The administrative reforms and coinage system introduced during Aethelred's reign would have a lasting impact on English governance, even as his military failures overshadowed these achievements. In conclusion, Aethelred the Unready's reign was shaped by immense external pressures and internal conflicts. His epithet, while memorable, does not fully capture the complexity of his reign, nor does it give him due credit for the difficulties he faced as a ruler of a kingdom under constant siege. Although his efforts to stave off Viking domination ultimately failed, the story of Aethelred's reign is a testament to the fragility of power in the face of overwhelming challenges.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Delving into the Deep for regular updates.